The first time my mother-in-law barred my 7-year-old at her door, the afternoon sun was a hard coin jammed into the sky, and the wind smelled like cut grass and old grudges. Eli's sneakers squeaked on the slate step, as if even the rubber knew it wasn't welcome. I stood behind him with a Tupperware of his favorite lemon bars, the kind Ruth used to request with a polite text and a passive-aggressive smiley face, before everything inside our family was reduced to labels and locks. The door opened only a hand's width. The brass chain stretched, bright and tight like a threat. Ruth's eye, blue like polished ice, appeared in the narrow strip, then narrowed further when she saw me. "In my house," she said, voice crisp, brittle, rehearsed, only with his father. My son's breaths were small animals in his chest. He clutched the coloring page he'd made for her at school, a purple hydrangea garden, her favorite, scribbled with the diligence of a child who still believes effort is a key that opens any door. "Grandma," he whispered. He didn't say, "I brought you flowers you can keep forever." He didn't say, "Dad hasn't called." He didn't say anything a 7-year-old shouldn't have to say. I could have argued the facts. His father, my ex, wasn't coming. The court order didn't require his presence. No one had to chaperone a grandson's hug. I could have reminded her that last fall she begged to see Eli after Jason left for a while, that turned into "we'll see," that curdled into silence. I could have said, "Love is not a reward you hand out like a gold star to the parent who obeys you best." But the chain flickered like a thin piece of lightning, and I heard what she wanted me to hear, that this wasn't about law or kindness or Eli's small, steady heartbeat. This was about control. Her house, her rules, her son, Jason, her idea of a family curated like a mantle photograph where I never quite fit the frame. "Grandma," Eli tried again, lifting the paper. Ruth didn't budge. Her perfume, a powdery, breathless floral, drifted into the slit like something fainting. "Only with his father," she repeated, and there was a flick at the corner of her mouth, some old pain disguised as a policy. Behind her, the entryway light hummed. The hall runner was still the pale blue one from Sundays, the one she rolled back when the church friends came to sip coffee and compliment her discipline. Somewhere deeper in the house, a grandfather clock clicked, counting down a truth that had been waiting to be said for years. I felt Eli turn to me, questioning without words. I imagined the story he might tell himself if I failed him here. I did something wrong. Grandma doesn't want me. I am a problem to be scheduled around. Shame breeds in the shadows adults create. I bent to his level and touched his shoulder, steady. "We're okay," I told him, in that calm, steady tone I keep for storms. "We're always okay together." I set the lemon bars on the step, a peace offering to a war that didn't deserve a treaty, and I looked into the narrow space where Ruth's eye watched me as if I were a stray. "You're blocking a child," I said, quiet enough to slip past her defenses, and loud enough, I hoped, to reach whatever part of her still remembered herself before the hardness. "And you're teaching him the wrong lesson." She didn't answer. The chain slid back, the door closed, and the lemon bars sat on the stoop like something you leave on a grave when you don't know how to speak to the dead. I took Eli's hand. His palm was warm, sticky with the condensation from the lemonade we'd shared on the drive. We walked back to the car. The sky had that almost evening color that makes old houses glow with the illusion of kindness. I buckled him in, kissed his temple, and promised myself that we wouldn't be trained by someone else's story of us. The engine coughed to life. On the passenger seat, the purple hydrangea drawing slid, face up, hopeful. I turned the car toward home with a quiet vow. If she wanted to make a rule out of a wound, I'd learn to make a boundary out of love. Before all that, before chains on doors and rehearsed lines delivered like verdicts, there was a little town by the water called Maple Harbor, a Massachusetts postcard of weathered shingles, picket fences and gulls with screaming opinions. I moved there when Eli was 3, and I still believed exhaustion could be solved by good coffee and sturdy lists. Maple Harbor was a place where Saturdays smelled like clam bakes and sunscreen, where the hardware store owner knew the mischief level of every teenager by first and last name, and where Ruth, my mother-in-law, ran the church bake sale with the efficiency of an admiral piloting a fleet. When Jason and I were still a wee, she introduced me as our Emily, the way you claim a person the moment you suspect they might float. Our story started the cliché way. 2 college kids sharing cheap pizza and complicated dreams. A surprise blue-pink line on a stick. Promises that sounded like lullabies hummed over a sink full of dishes. Jason was charming like a summer wind that makes you forget winter exists. He could make a room lean toward him with a joke. He could love me so loudly I mistook volume for safety. He could disappear into his own quiet for days and come back with apologies that bloomed like fireworks. Beautiful, bright, and gone too soon. I learned to count his returns as proof, and I learned too late that return is a habit even bad decisions keep. Eli arrived during a March storm that rattled the hospital windows and baptized us all in the knowledge that nothing would be simple anymore. He was red and furious and perfect, a small sun we orbited without looking away. Jason cried when he held him. So did I. Ruth came with lavender hand lotion and a notebook of helpful tips, her mouth full of the words mothers hoard. Swaddle, burp, trust yourself, know you're doing it wrong, hand him to me. She took over like a weather system. I let her, at first. I was 22 and terrified and grateful for anyone who could turn exhaustion into order. And for a while, we were a picture. 3 adults and 1 miraculous baby, a family propped up by casseroles and church bulletins. If you're here because you know the other pictures, the ones where the frame cracks, you're not alone. If you've ever stood on a doorstep and been told love requires a password you don't have, I am telling this for you. If stories like mine help you feel seen, I'd love to have you with me. Subscribe to the channel, join this community of women who refuse to be quieted, and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I want to know the names of your towns, the colors of your skies, the sounds your kitchens make when your kids laugh. I want us to map ourselves. Newark and Nashville, Phoenix and Portland, bus stop benches and break rooms and quiet cars where you listen on the way to everything. Your voice matters here. By the time Eli turned 5, Jason's summer win turned into weather I had to track. Late nights, missed pickups, money that arrived like a miracle one week and vanished like a rumor the next. He started calling his silences needing space, a real estate I couldn't afford to rent. He loved Eli fiercely, but he loved the way the world lit up when he walked into a bar too. Maybe he thought there'd always be time to be 2 people, the boy who was everybody's favorite and the man who kept his promises. The problem with time is that children measure it with their hearts. Absence echoes. Eli began asking questions I couldn't answer honestly without breaking something in him. Why is Daddy late? Why does Daddy forget? Ruth's solution was choreography. We would all move to her rhythm. Drop Eli here, pick him up there, keep me in the loop, don't blindside me with your independence. She believed in family like a fortress, which meant the gates closed from the inside. I tried to understand her history, raised in a house where love was performance, married to a man who was tender but tired, raising a son who learned early that charm could be currency. She was made of rules the way coastline is made of rock, shaped by storms, unyielding by nature. She didn't like that I had my own map. When Jason finally left for a bit to figure things out, it was brutally ordinary. A duffel bag by the door, a kiss pressed to Eli's hair. The story people tell themselves when they're not ready to tell the truth. I'm not abandoning you. I'm taking a break from disappointing you. He promised FaceTimes that came late, or not at all. He promised weekends that turned into Mondays just as the school bell rang. I became a woman who kept 2 wardrobes in one closet, Hope and Plan B. And through it all, Eli learned to count the days without his father in 2 languages, calendar and heartbeat. Ruth grew sharper the way water freezes, a slow, hardening refusal. She'd always had opinions about me, my work schedule at the hospital, the fact that my living room didn't match, the way I laughed like someone who didn't ask permission to exist. But after Jason left, her opinions turned into policies. You need structure, she'd say, and the you felt heavy with judgment. Eli needs consistency. I agreed. Consistency is a kindness kids can measure. I offered calendars, compromises, the things women offer when we are told to be reasonable in the face of demands designed to make us small. But reason doesn't work on fear, and Ruth's fear wore my face. So I planned that visit for a Saturday in June with lemonade and lemon bars and Eli's careful hydrangeas. I texted in advance. I smiled when she didn't respond. I put on the blouse she once said made me look less tired. I told Eli we would bring Grandma sunshine, and I believed it because children deserve mothers who believe in sunshine even when the forecast is knives. I parked at her curb, adjusted the mirror, smoothed my hair, and walked my son up the steps of a house I'd never realized was a museum of Ruth's best version of us. I didn't know we were about to be reassigned as exhibits. Grandson, conditional access. Mother, unauthorized. If this is already brushing a bruise in you, pause and breathe. And if you're still with me, subscribe and say where you're tuning in from. We're not meant to do this alone. That's the first and last truth of all my stories. We didn't return to Ruth's house for 3 weeks, not because I was afraid of a chain on a door, though I was, but because I decided the only way forward was not to press against a line designed to cut me. Boundaries are lines you draw with your own pen. I bought a calendar with whale illustrations for Eli's room, and we filled it with swimming lessons, library story time, pizza Fridays at Tony's on Hull Street, and Sunday beach walks when the tide was shy. I made joy an appointment we kept. Ruth didn't call. She texted Jason, though, and he forwarded me the cliff notes of her disapproval like a man holding a hot plate with someone else's dinner on it. "Your mother thinks I'm keeping Eli from her?" I asked. He sent a shrug emoji and then, after a pause, a half-hearted, "She's old school. She thinks it's confusing for him to be with you at her place when I'm not there." I stared at the screen. Confusing to be with his mother? In a house with pictures of him on every surface? I typed it, then deleted it. Fighting with a ghost is like boxing fog. You get sweaty and nowhere. Then the school nurse called. "Eli's fine," she said quickly. The way nurses preface news with the most important part. "Just a headache. We gave him water. But I wanted to tell you something," he said. My body went cold. "He told me," she continued gently, "that his grandma says her house is only for family." She hesitated. He said, "But I'm family, right? Mommy's my family." I swallowed something sharp. The nurse added, "He asked me if the school was allowed to be his family on days his daddy's not there." I thanked her, hung up, and sat in the break room with my hands around a mug I didn't drink from. Shame arrived like a storm that thought it had a right to my sky. Then rage arrived, clean and clarifying. We don't teach children their home is a moving target. I called Ruth. She didn't pick up. I sent a text as neutral as an envelope. "Let's talk about Eli and visits. He misses you. I'm available this week." No reply. 2 days later, an official-looking letter slid through my mail slot like a paper blade. "Notice of concern," the header read, "from the Massachusetts Department of Children and Families." An anonymous report, words that opened a trapdoor beneath my feet, alleged emotional instability in the home and inconsistent supervision. Anyone who's had a stranger step into their living room with a clipboard and the power to rename your life knows how quickly your heart can turn into a clenched fist. I called the number with the steadiness of a person who knows panic is a luxury. "Come by," I said. "You'll find a boy who knows where his soccer cleats are and a fruit bowl that's never empty." The social worker who arrived, Ms. Diaz, was kind and clinical, and clearly bored by vindictive filings. She scanned our kitchen like a searchlight, found chore charts and a dinosaur drawing, sat at my wobbly thrift store table, and listened while Eli told her about his favorite jelly beans and how Grandma's house smelled like fancy soap and secrets. Miss Diaz arched an eyebrow at me, and I shrugged because children do not lie about the weather inside rooms. When she left, she squeezed my shoulder. "Weaponized concern," she said dryly. "It's epidemic in custody-adjacent families. You're doing fine." Her report closed the case a week later. The door, however, had opened to a darker hallway. Ruth would not only withhold love, she would summon the state to confirm a narrative where I was chaos and she was stability. She was building a case made out of smoke and calling it stone. Jason finally answered a call with his voice instead of his silence. He sounded tired, and guilt wore him like an old jacket. "Mom's just... she thinks Eli needs..." He trailed off. "Me?" I finished. "At her house? Is that her house or her temple?" He exhaled. "She says it's confusing for him to see you there without me. She thinks you're trying to erase me." I laughed, the kind of laugh that cuts your own throat on the way out. "Ruth could make a shrine to you out of dryer lint, and she'd still say the only thing dangerous is my audacity to stand on my own feet." He said softly, and there we were. Two people who once made a family trying to speak through a fog machine someone kept refilling. "I'm in a program," he added. "Rehab." I swallowed surprise and 1,000 connected dots. "I'm glad," I said, and I meant it because love doesn't disappear just because you don't invite it inside anymore. "But then?" I asked, voice steady. "How exactly does your mother plan to enforce only with his father when his father is not available?" Silence. Then softly, "I didn't tell her." Of course he hadn't. Shame built bad architecture. Rooms with no doors. Secrets stacked like furniture you trip over at night. Meanwhile, Maple Harbor did what small towns do. It noticed. Women at the grocery store paused, then nodded with a kindness that tasted like solidarity. Men at the hardware store offered to carry my mulch to the car and looked like they wanted to offer a war too. Tony at the pizza place slid an extra garlic knot into Eli's bag. Unstated code for the village sees you. And the church ladies, Ruth's court, studied me as if my courage were impertinence. One of them, Mrs. Whitcomb, whom I'd once liked for her cinnamon rolls and her laugh, pulled me aside in the vestibule. "Ruth is very upset," she murmured. "She worries you'll poison Eli against Jason." I smiled, teeth showing. "I'm too busy feeding him pancakes and teaching him to return the grocery cart to the corral," I said. "There's no space left for poison." The next Saturday, I drove to Ruth's again, not to beg, to draw a line. The hydrangeas were in full blue bloom, a miracle of stubborn beauty, and I thought, you grow where you're planted or you move the pot. I told Eli we were going to Grandma's to talk, that he might play in the yard while the grown-ups used their words, that no matter what happened, we'd get ice cream afterward. He nodded, serious in the way children are when they study their mother's face for signs of weather. We reached the slate steps. The lemon bar stain was still faint on the stoop where I'd placed my offering weeks earlier. I rang the bell. No chain this time. The door opened and there was Ruth, pressed and perfumed, her mouth an underline. "In my house," she began, and I held up my hand. "Stop," I said, not loud, not mean, but like a teacher with a classroom of truths. "You don't get to make the rules about my motherhood. We can talk about schedules. We can talk about visits. We can talk about how to love the same child without demanding his loyalty as payment. But you don't get to exile him from love because his father is tending to his own recovery." Her eyes flinched. A tell. She didn't know I knew. "Jason," she began, "is getting help," I finished. "I'm glad. You should be too." She stepped back, momentarily unmoored, then rallied. "I have concerns," she said, grasping for paperwork, for Ms. Diaz's clipboard, for the Power Anonymous letters we're supposed to hand her. "So do I answered. "I'm concerned that you believe love is a locked cabinet. I'm concerned that you call the state when your fear is a devotion you mistake for duty. And I'm concerned that you teach my son love is conditional on pleasing you." She tried a different angle. Morality as weapon. "Church teaches us that love is patient," I said, "and kind. Not jealous, not boastful, not proud, not dishonoring, not self-seeking, not easily angered, keeps no record of wrongs." I'm no theologian, but my grandmother's Bible was a map I still kept folded in the glove box of my memory. Ruth blinked. I watched the crack appear, and almost felt sorry for her because losing control when you've made it your God is a kind of death. "Let's talk," I said, gentler. "At your table, with lemonade, with Eli drawing hydrangeas, or we can talk later with a mediator. Either way, we will talk, but we won't do it through doors." She hesitated. For a second, the woman she must have been at 20, the one who had a baby and vowed the world wouldn't break him, flickered across her face. Then the clock inside her ticked, and she chose the familiar. "Come back when Jason can come," she said, softer, but the same. "In my house, only with his father." Eli stood very still. The wind ruffled his hair. I made the choice that would become the hinge of everything. I did not beg a closed door to become a mother. I turned, took Eli's hand, and walked to the car. We went for ice cream, and on the way, my phone buzzed. A number I didn't recognize. A voicemail. I pressed play. Jason's voice, wrecked and honest. I signed something. I should have told you. Mom wanted me to give her temporary guardianship rights for pickups, visits, in case I couldn't. I said no. I need to say that to you directly. I said no. If she's using my name to bar you and Eli, I'm sorry. I'll fix it." The car was suddenly too small for how relief and fury can occupy the same square inch of air. A new picture sharpened. Ruth trying to make legal what she couldn't make moral, forging authority out of the posture of a matriarch. I tasted steel. This would not be solved with lemon bars. I hired a mediator first, because battles fought with swords create losers on both sides, and I wanted Eli to win. The mediator, a woman named Kara with calm eyes and a voice like a level surface, invited us to a table that wasn't a battleground. Kara reminded us, with a firmness that could hold a house up, that the only person whose needs mattered in that room was a 7-year-old boy who loved hydrangeas and garlic knots, and the idea that 4 people could share one truth. Ruth showed up with a folder thick enough to be a biography of her grievances. She wore a navy blazer like armor and held a pen like a gavel. I showed up with snapshots. Eli and Ruth laughing over gingerbread houses, Eli's hand in Ruth's garden helping her plant bulbs, and a printout of Ms. Diaz's closed case note with the sentence underlined, "No safety concerns identified." Jason joined by phone from rehab, his voice crackling through speakerphone like a second chance trying to sound confident. Kara laid out ground rules. No interrupting, no character assassinations, only I statements, evidence preferred over accusations. Ruth nodded as if she were a model student, then broke every rule in the first 5 minutes. "I worry that Emily's instability. I have a full-time job and a steady apartment," I said without heat. "Eli's pediatrician and teacher can speak to his thriving. I worry she's alienating Jason." Jason's voice. "Mom, I alienated myself." Silence like a thunderclap. "I worry about values." Ruth pivoted. "Eli needs moral anchors. He needs a father in the home. He needs adults who keep promises." I replied. "He needs to know love doesn't vanish when someone fails." Kara held up a hand. "We're here to make a plan," she said, "not to litigate worth." And yet, there was litigation brewing. Because when Ruth realized the room would not bend to her script, she reached for her folder's back pocket and slid out a document that made my scalp prickle. "I've prepared a petition," she announced, as if revealing dessert, "for grandparent visitation rights with conditions that protect Eli's consistency. It includes a clause that visits occur only when Jason is present until he is stabilized." Kara inhaled sharply. "That's not how these cases work," she said carefully. "And Jason's presence is not a legal requirement for a grandmother to see her grandson." Ruth smiled without warmth. "We'll see what a judge thinks." She glanced at me, then at the speakerphone, daring us to acknowledge the theater of her control. Jason cleared his throat. "Mom," he said steadier, "I won't support anything that makes Eli feel like Emily is the problem. I signed a consent granting Emily full decision-making while I'm in treatment. I refuse to sign anything else. If you file something, I'll ask the court to deny it." You could hear the moment Ruth realized her favorite weapon, her son, wasn't going to fire. Her face tightened, and for a second I saw the fear under the fury, the terror that the story she'd used to survive, that she could command love by managing it, wasn't true. People become dangerous when their myths are threatened. 2 days later, I received notice of a hearing. Ruth had filed anyway, petitioning for visitation with conditions that, if granted, would institutionalize her chain. Court has a smell, paper, old HVAC, ambition. I wore my navy dress and my grandmother's locket, my talisman against rooms where women are told to whisper. Our attorney, a woman named Laurel, who kept her hair in a braid like a rope you could climb, told me what to expect. "We'll present stability," she said. "School records, pediatrician notes, Ms. Diaz's report, Jason's consent. We'll center Eli. We won't match her drama. We'll offer the court a map." Ruth arrived with Mrs. Whitcomb and 2 other church friends, a small choir of approval. She carried the same overstuffed folder and wore righteousness like pearls. Jason came straight from rehab, his counselor by his side, eyes clear in a way I hadn't seen in years. He squeezed my shoulder and whispered, "I'm sorry," the kind that doesn't ask for absolution, only offers the truth because it's time. The judge, a woman with salt and pepper hair and the patient face of someone who's heard every version of a lie and still believes in the right order of things, called the room to order. Ruth's attorney started with a flourish. "My client merely seeks to maintain a stable environment for her grandson, one that centers paternal involvement and moral consistency." He used a lot of words that tried to plant flags in my chest. Merely stable. Moral. Laurel stood and dismantled the edifice with clean lines. "Ms. Carter, me, provides consistent care. The child is thriving. The father is in treatment and has assigned decision-making to the mother. The Department of Children and Families investigated an anonymous complaint and closed it with no findings." She let the silence do a second job. "This is not a crisis. This is an attempted power grab wrapped in concern." Then came the moment I hadn't planned, but life writes better plot twists than any of us. Laurel asked permission to submit a short audio clip into evidence. The judge nodded. The courtroom speakers crackled and then cleared, and we heard Ruth's voice, unmistakable and cold, recorded at the door on that June day by my doorbell camera I'd installed for package thieves and found myself grateful for in an entirely different robbery. "In my house, only with his father," Ruth's voice said, the chain rattling like an amen. "You're blocking a child," my voice answered. calm, almost a whisper, the kind women use when we've decided not to hand our rage to an audience. And you're teaching him the wrong lesson. The clip ended. The courtroom held its breath. Ruth's attorney flushed. Recording laws, he began, scrambling for a trapdoor. Laurel was ready. Of course she was. Public doorway, single-party consent, video for security, she recited. The judge nodded, bored with performative indignation. She looked at Ruth. Why? She asked. Would you deny your grandson entry to your home unless his father was present? Ruth's mouth opened, closed. She went for the script. Stability is not conditional love, the judge finished, not unkindly. It is consistent love. There is a difference. Jason spoke next, and if there was redemption available in that room for him, he earned its smallest coin. I'm in recovery, he said, voice steady. I've failed a lot in the last 2 years, but I won't fail my son by allowing my mother to make him feel unsafe with his mother. Emily has been the steady one. Any plan that makes Eli think his mother needs my permission to love him is a plan I refuse. It was the first time in a long time I felt something like partnership. Thin, fragile, but real. Returned to the room. Not romantic love, not even friendship. Just 2 parents refusing a narrative that hurt a child. Sometimes that's the bravest intimacy left. The judge ruled from the bench. A mercy I hadn't expected. Petition for conditional visitation is denied, she said. Words that unclenched my hands. Grandparent visitation may be arranged by the parents at their discretion, without conditions that undermine the child's relationship with his primary caregiver. She looked at Ruth, and her voice softened into a warning dressed as compassion. Mrs. Carver, love that requires a password teaches a child to beg. That is not love. If you want a relationship with your grandson, show up for him, without making his mother smaller to make yourself bigger. Ruth's face tightened, then collapsed, the way a structure looks when the last nail is pulled. For a second I saw it, the girl she had been, begging her own mother for a gentler voice, growing into a woman who confused control with safety, because somewhere along the way, she was told love needed guards. It didn't excuse. It explained. Sometimes explanation is the only balm we get. We left the courthouse into a day that had the audacity to be beautiful. Sky like a clean sheet. Wind like forgiveness if you let it be. Outside, near the steps, Mrs. Whitcomb approached me with a mouthful of words she had never said to me before. I didn't know, she whispered. I looked at her, deciding in the space of a breath whether I had energy for her remorse. I nodded once. Now you do, I said. Jason stood a few feet away, his counselor at his side, looking both smaller and more honest than I remembered. He approached, hands in pockets like a penitent boy. I meant what I said, he murmured, about fixing it. Good, I answered. Start with Eli. Show up. Not with grand gestures. With Tuesday. We didn't go back to Ruth's house for a month. Not as punishment. As pause. Boundaries are not bans. They are definitions of where love can safely happen. In those weeks, we built a life that didn't defer to anyone else's myth. Tuesday became Jason's drop-in hour at the park, with a coach's whistle and a bag of apples. He kept coming. Eli stopped asking if his father would show. He started planning what they'd do. Ms. Diaz sent a final note, case permanently closed, no concerns, and added a smiley face I cut out and taped to the inside of our junk drawer, because sometimes the state gives you a sticker for surviving its gaze. Then one afternoon, an envelope arrived with Ruth's handwriting, the slant strict as always. I stared at it for a long time. Eli found me at the counter. Is that from Grandma? He asked. I nodded. Can I open it? He asked. I thought of all the doors, open and shut, all the chains and keys and passwords. Together, I said. We opened it like a ritual. Inside was a photograph of Eli in her garden from last summer, crouched beside the hydrangeas, green smudges on his knees. On the back, Ruth had written, I would like to try again. No conditions. Lemon bars welcome. Love, Grandma Ruth. I laughed, a sound that didn't cut. I cried a little too. I texted Kara, the mediator. Progress report. Humility. She sent back a heart. We went the next Sunday, but we did it our way. No chain on the door. No policies disguised as piety. I walked my son up the steps of a house that had learned, however briefly, that love survives only when guards lay down their arms. Ruth opened the door. Her face was naked in a way I'd never seen. Hi, she said to Eli, and her voice wobbled on the one word that mattered. Hi, Grandma, he said, and the relief in his small body made me forgive. Not what she had done, but my own clenched history of it. We sat at her table with lemonade. Eli drew hydrangeas, more careful than ever. Ruth and I spoke in the delicate grammar of women who are building a bridge from splinters. She didn't apologize with a speech. She apologized with a sentence that was enough. "I was wrong," she said. "I thought control would keep us safe. It didn't." I nodded. "I won't let Eli be the rope in anyone's tug of war," I replied. "I will leave again if the chain returns." She nodded, and for once, her nod meant surrender to the right thing. Afterward, in the car, Eli asked, "Are we okay now?" "Children are architects of hope. We're better," I said. Okay is a moving target. Better is a direction. He gave me a look that meant I'd said a mom thing, and he'd let it slide. We drove to Tony's. He got extra garlic knots. Maple Harbor felt less like a jury and more like a neighborhood. The gulls still screamed their opinions, but their voices sounded like gossip about the tide instead of the contents of our kitchen. Here's what I learned, and what I want to hand you like a clean towel after a storm. You are allowed to refuse someone else's telling of you. You are allowed to teach your child that love doesn't come with a contract. It comes with a table where everyone has a seat, not because they earned it, but because they remember what the table is for. You are allowed to enforce kindness like a law, and to leave rooms where respect is taxed. You are allowed to name weaponized concern and put it down outside your door. You are allowed to choose Tuesday over grand gestures, consistency over spectacle, truth over the theatrics of righteousness. And if you are standing at a door right now, if someone is telling you that their house has rules that make your motherhood small, remember this: houses are built by humans. Home is built by love. One can shut you out. The other lives wherever you and your child make it live, under a thrift store lamp, over pancakes, in the quiet of a bedtime story read twice, because the day asked too much of both of you. The door that matters most is the one inside your chest. Keep it open for yourself first. Your child will learn that architecture from you. If this story found you on a hard day, I'm glad you stayed. If it gave you language, take it. If it gave you permission, use it. I'm telling these stories because we aren't meant to be brave in the dark by ourselves. Subscribe if you want more nights turned into mornings. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Your city, your corner store, your bus route, your kitchen with the sticky floors and the holy chaos. I want to know your places so I can picture you when I write. We are many. We are louder than chains and kinder than rules. And we're building homes in the wild, on purpose, together.